Hello, Mr. Worth. Thank you for accepting our interview. So, Daniel and I have some questions to ask you.
Okay.
We're here because we're going to play music at a concert called Songs to the Soil. And
Yes.
to be a part of it, we needed to talk to a conservationist. And it's a concert to raise awareness for the planet.
Okay.
And so here are our questions. So,
Okay.
number 1, who or what inspired you to love the planet?
Well, it's been a lifelong endeavor or a lifelong activity for me. In my younger days, when I was in high school and college, there was a very strong environmental movement. That was the time in history when they passed things like the Clean Air Act and the Clean Water Act, because there were terrible instances of air pollution and terrible instances of water pollution. There were actually rivers in this country that would catch on fire because of the pollution in the water. And that got my attention and attracted me to be in some kind of environmental work. And so that's what I studied in college, and that's what I've been doing ever since.
So I have an extra question. There was water catching on fire because of pollution?
Because of pollution. Yes, there were things like oils and gasoline floating right on top of the water, and the river would catch on fire.
Whoa. How? Like with lightning or something?
Or somebody would throw a cigarette in the water or something. Something would ignite it. Yeah, this was a common occurrence in Cleveland, Ohio.
Oh. So, did you love your job and why?
Well, I do now. I do because there's lots of interesting things that are of interest to me. And I feel as though in my very small way, I'm making a contribution to, my work is forestry. And I always feel like I'm making a contribution to maintain and conserve the forest land. And because I'm an educator, I'm teaching other students, and hopefully some of those students will go on to careers and further this work. And so I feel like it has some influence in the future. And that's very satisfying. And sometimes it's very enjoyable. And so, yes, I like my work.
So, what's the most interesting story that you can tell us about your work or your job?
The most interesting story I can tell. I think my most interesting story would be about people who own tracts of land. These would be farmers or families that inherited, some acreage of woodland, and they have gone out of their way, and sometimes to very great extent, to keep it intact and to keep it preserved. And I'm talking to them at any point in time because they were interested in a management plan or something like that. And I'm thinking, when I hear their story, that they've done something really extraordinary. And, a management plan is the least we can do to help. And these people don't get enough credit for what they've done. Somebody has, gone and taken responsibility, financial responsibility for the old family farm, for example. When the rest of the family wanted to just sell it off to developers, they chose to keep it intact and keep it as open land for agricultural purposes or forest purposes or habitat purposes. And our society needs that open land in order to function the way it does, and have all the clean water and other benefits that those forest lands provide us. And so the people who go out of their way or go to great expense to keep land as forest land, I think deserve an awful lot of credit. And I've met several of these people, and they make for very interesting stories. And so those are the first stories that would come to mind. In terms of things that have happened to me personally during the course of my work, sometimes it has to do with students, and sometimes it has to do with a simple environmental phenomenon. I was telling some folks about the other day about an experience that happened to me when I was working alone in the forest, setting up some kind of project or another. And I could hear this noise. This noise was way off in the distance, but it was getting louder and louder and louder. And it was a very indistinct noise. It sounded like a train in the distance going by, but it lasted for so long. I'm thinking, can't be a train. There's no train that's that long. And as the noise got louder and louder and louder, I came to realize that it was comprised of a whole bunch of different noises all mixed together. And it came to the point that the noise was being caused by a flock of birds that had come. This was the fall, and this flock of birds was flying south for the winter, but it was late in the day and they had come down to the ground to forage for insects and seeds in the woods, in the leaves that had fallen off the trees. And so they were flitting back and forth and cheeping and chirping and rustling the leaves up and down, looking for bugs and seeds, and just making their way as a flock of birds through the woods. And that's what was making this loud noise. And this flock of birds just came right up to me and went right around and just kept on going while I stood there. And it was just flabbergasting at the time, to me. And I'll never forget it as long as I live, but it was a pretty interesting thing to have happen.
Cool. That was a very funny story. Next question is, what was your job, and how did you take part in your job?
Well, my current job is I work for the University of Connecticut, and I'm a part of the time I'm teaching students in classes. There's a couple of classes that I teach on subjects that have to do with forestry. And the other part of my job is working as an educator in the general public. I work with professionals who are out there. I work with private landowners. I work with towns and communities, providing educational services about the forest and about forest management and about forest conservation. I do that in a variety of ways.
What did a normal day at work look like?
Excuse me. Well, I don't have any normal days. They're all different. I have an office that I can go to and do things just like I'm doing right now, have meetings with people online, talking about various things. I always have some kind of emails and communications to take care of. Sometimes I have to do some writing. Some days when I'm teaching class, I'll go to the university and I'll set up my materials and I'll do a lecture or teach a lab or whatever the case may be. And very often this means being out in the woods with students, talking about whatever subject we're talking about that day. This semester, for example, I'm teaching tree identification, and the students are there to learn the names of all the different trees and their ecological characteristics. And so that's what we're working on as the semester goes on this semester. And hopefully when we're done, they'll all know the names of all the trees, both the English common name and the Latin name, and something about them, something about each one.
Cool. I read a story on my Chromebook. It was called The Terrible Hodag, and the inside cover, it literally said dedicated to all the forests that still stand.
That's cool.
And it's about a giant monster that everybody fears. He has the body of a bear, the back of a dinosaur, the head of an ox, and the tail of an alligator, and he's 40 feet tall.
Wow.
Everybody is scared of him. And the main character, I forgot his name. I think it was Old Gold or something like that. And this man was working as a lumberjack with all his mates, and the boss man just doesn't pay him. The boss man is super greedy, so he keeps asking for more and more and more. So one day, Old is so upset that he forgets to never go in the forest at night, and he wanders into the forest at night and forgets about the stories of the Hodag. So he meets the Hodag, who turns out to be a good beast who helps them with all their lumberjacking. And so he whips his tail back and forth and cuts down the trees. And then the next day, when the boss man doesn't pay him, that he helps the lumberjacks get the wood to the sawmill. And after that, the boss man still doesn't want to pay them. So the Hodag tells him, if the boss man doesn't pay you now, just bring him to me. And then the boss man gets so scared when he sees the Hodag that he runs away, drops all his money, and doesn't come back. It was the autumn, and if they didn't have enough money for food in the winter, then they would starve. And that was the end of the story.
Well, hopefully they collected some money from the sawmill, and they had enough money for the winter.
Hopefully they did.
Yeah. Well, good.
Thank you. Also, I made you a little sketch of the forest with a deer, a fox, and it's in a field covered with flowers. I also made a squirrel on that tree.
That's very nice. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Worthley.
Thank you, Tom. We really appreciate it.
Well, it was my pleasure. If you have any more questions, don't be afraid to let me know.
Absolutely.
We can wait.
I have one more. What's your favorite part about the forest?
Well, part of it is the quiet, but it's not usually all that quiet because there's birds and spring peepers and all of that kind of thing, but it's a different kind of sound than you normally hear. Because I've worked with the forest all my life, there's a deep familiarity that I have. And so it makes me feel very comfortable. And if an afternoon in the woods, I'll never come home mad. Some people come home mad from work because work frustrates them. But if you get a chance to spend an afternoon in the woods, you won't come home mad.
Yeah.
Definitely. All right. Anything else?
Thank you, Mr. Worthley, for our interview.
Well, thank you. And I wish you good luck with it and good luck in your concert.